Welcome to Interviews with Innocence, a podcast about spirituality, consciousness, and exploring the wisdom our children bring into this world. I believe that our very young children are our greatest teachers. After all, they're the masters of living in the present moment, bubbling in unconditional love, enjoying the messiness of life, and curious about the universe in all its dimensions. The pure essence that young children exhibit lives within all of us. My hope is that these interviews will help us discover, embrace, and connect with the sacred core of childhood that resides within each of our hearts. I am your host, Marla Hughes. Today, I am thrilled to have David Maginley on the show. David is an interfaith spiritual counselor at the QEII Health Sciences Centre in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and author of Beyond Surviving: Cancer and Your Spiritual Journey. He has also survived cancer 4 times, which led to a profound near-death experience and explorations in consciousness and the connection of body, mind, and spirit. David, with degrees in philosophy and as an ordained minister, David has a deep sense of purpose in supporting others in their spiritual journey. He knows what it's like to have cancer from both sides of the hospital bed and has a sense of this life from both sides of the veil. And you can read the rest of his bio in the show notes because I really want to get started with David. Thank you so much for coming to the program, David.
Oh, great to be here, Marla. Great to be with your audience, too.
Yes, it's so great to have you. So I just want to jump right in. I mean, I've done almost 100 interviews now, and you have a very unusual journey. You've had an unusual journey, and tell us a little bit about having cancer 4 times and going through that, and then a little bit about your near-death experience.
Well, sure. And thank you for saying I have an unusual journey compared to over 100 people that you've interviewed. It's nice to be a little unique amongst that exotic company, right? Because you've interviewed some really amazing people. So, uh, but it's interesting to hear that. It is an unusual journey, but from the inside, it is simply my journey.
Right.
So I've had cancer 4 times, a very strange type called paranganglioma, and 90% of these grow on the adrenal gland and function like an extra adrenal gland. So when your adrenaline is released, it triggers the tumor to explode with all of these chemicals: norepinephrine, dopamine, epinephrine, catecholamines. And most people then die right away, within 30 seconds, a minute. And it just makes you skyrocket, blow astronomically, and overload your entire system. So you don't suffer protracted illness with this disease, and chemo and radiation don't work. You need a bomb squad to go in there and take that tumor out. And if you survive that, because as soon as you jostle the tumor, it blows and you die. So most people die before it's diagnosed because the signs of it look like an anxiety attack, right? Trembling hands, beating heart, flushed face, sweating, and fight or flight, right? All this adrenaline going in you. I've survived many explosions of my tumor, um, and I'm very, very lucky to be here because I've had it 4 times. I think I'm the only one on the books to have it more than once, or certainly more than that many times. My tumors, 10% of these grow off the adrenal gland. That's me. 10% of those are malignant. That's me. So nothing like being unique.
Wow.
And so I was actually doing a church service in a hospital chapel. Now that's a pretty good place to die, because you're going to have medical staff close by and you're going to have people praying for you. So I was doing this church service. I was on internship. I was a student minister. And of course, public speaking is one of the most anxiety provoking things you can do. It activated the tumor, and I tried to get it under control and just calm down, breathe into it. Really, every time I was stepping into the pulpit, I was taking my life in my hands. But I'm that kind of fool. And this time the tumor blew, and down I went. I was out before I hit the floor. This was my second of 4 rounds with cancer since between ages of 17 and 36. So I suddenly found myself on a grassy hill. I didn't have an out of body experience. I didn't see myself from above. I was simply on this beautiful grassy hill. There was a tree up there at the top of the hill. I wanted to run to the tree. I couldn't um, because there was someone at my side, an angelic entity, a celestial entity, and yet one that felt very much human and very much like my best friend. Uh, I knew him and was known fully by him. And I felt his power and his compassion and his friendship and his generosity and his humor and his authority and his wisdom and companionship. And it was great because now I was home. Now, that's the word described by the majority of people who have a near death experience. And I always wondered why. In reflecting, I realized it's because you've come home to yourself. Here, there is so much material in the subconscious that we are suppressing. We actually are fractured entities, oblivious to the majority of our life story, abysmal historians not able to remember most moments, and compensating or overcompensating for our ego projection and transference and countertransference. But there, I was integrated, authentic. There wasn't any aspect of myself I was not aware of. I was one with everything. I was in full relationship to myself and the environment, and every blade of grass that moved and the light that flowed through me with nothing less than love. He wouldn't run to the tree with me. He wouldn't. I tried to cajole him and encourage him, and he wouldn't do it. He just said, "We need to talk. Let's talk about life," and we did. And basically, it summed up in his 4 main statements: things are going very well. You can't stay here. You have more work to do, and we will be with you. There was no arguing. I tried. I didn't want to leave, and I knew I was not here, and I didn't want to come back here. I didn't care about here, right? It's not that I was cruel or insensitive or didn't value what was here, but there, that state, you are so utterly complete and one with joy. Um, but he said I had more work to do. I was 27 years old. And he put his hand on my shoulder as my heart sank, and I realized I wasn't going to win. And he just poured in his love, and he said, "It's going to be okay. We will be with you." And he sent me back here, which really is difficult, if not an awful experience, to wake up in this 2-dimensional form with the poverty of words and the fragmented thoughts and the abysmal inadequacy of everything to be as real as you know it should be. And yet, how could we ever be disconnected from that reality, right? That is the underlying consciousness from which reality emanates and is sustained. So I know I'm there, plugged in. I know I can't be separate from it, but it sure feels like it.
Right.
As I bumble along, a fool
As
as ever
we all,
before in this world.
as we all bumble along, right?
Yeah.
Well, I found it just fascinating when you said in one of your interviews that the experience, or not the experience, but when you were there, it was utterly ordinary. Ordinary in the sense that you kind of walked into another life, walked into another, another place, another dimension. Yet the experience was just so, was it like it happened? I mean, do you remember it Like it happened yesterday?
Absolutely. Uh,
Yeah.
exactly. And this is also very common with near-death experiencers.
Yes.
Every detail, the emotional energy, the clarity, the quality of his presence, that love, it lives in you. And yet you're stuck in this. So you're homesick, right?
Wow.
And we suppress the vitality of that living memory because you know, if we spend time in it, we end up just weeping. We end up
Yes.
just homesick, right? And and you got to function. You got to deal with the reality you're embedded in. So
Right.
you put it away into a sacred room, and you bumble along.
We move
It
forward. I
doesn't make you
remember.
perfect. It doesn't enlighten you. It kind of messes you up and makes you lonely.
Right.
And yet, you know you're profoundly loved and one with it. So just love others as you can while you're in this funny place.
Yeah. So, David, so that was your second NDE. And so, I'm sorry, it was your second bout where you had you
The
dropped,
cancer, yeah.
yes, because of the cancer. And your first NDE, and also with your you call yourself a reverend? Is
Oh,
that
yes.
minister?
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of get reverend and minister. When I grew up, it was a minister on a little farm in Indiana. Is it kind of the same? Reverend minister?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm Reverend David McGinley. I'm a Lutheran minister. So reverend is to minister as doctor is to physician.
I see. I
Yeah.
see. Great.
So mainline religion, I wear the robes, we do the liturgy, we have the
Yes.
communion and baptism and the hymns and right. But I haven't had a church in well over 10 years now. I'm or even 15. For 20 years, I've been working simply as a chaplain at the hospital with
Yes.
palliative and cancer patients.
Wow. So who do you think it was that met you there, that presence?
Yeah, well, I know I can say with absolute confidence he was my best friend.
Yeah.
A lot of people, as I describe him, say, well, David, doesn't that sound like Jesus? Right? You're a Christian minister. Wasn't it Jesus? I never assumed it was. And I know this may sound odd, but it doesn't matter because he was no less infused with the spirit of Jesus, the character, right? He was love embodied. It was such a relaxed connection. And I thought the hubris of saying, oh, I met Jesus in heaven was just over the top. I've instinctively joked, oh, it was a junior apprentice from the warehouse, right? It
Right.
was just some guy who he's the bellman, right? And I just touched my toe on the doorstep of the wonder that waits for all of us. And
Right.
so it doesn't matter who he is. It matters that he is love, as all of us are in disguise.
Right. Right. That's exactly. He was love. So before your NDE and being a reverend and living the life that you do, did you were you surprised? What did this do to your beliefs? And what did you believe before your NDE that would happen when you
That's a
became a
really
Christian?
insightful question. That's a big one.
Thank you.
When I had my NDE, I was a student minister, so I had been studying theology,
Right.
parish administration, right? I was studying the Orthodox doctrine of Christianity, which includes the doctrine of sacrificial atonement, right? The understanding of the blood of Christ, the understanding of the nature of grace and justification by faith, and all of these very Christian concepts. I continued to wrestle and practice that perspective. But over the years after my NDE, um, a deeper theology or spirituality emerged, right? Because it takes, on average, 10 years for an adult to integrate a near death experience. And it took at least that long for me to develop some theological or spiritual language that was authentic to what I had experienced.
Yes.
So now what I believe is very different from what I believed when I had a church. Jesus is no less central, but who and what he is, right? Now I have an understanding of Jesus as the historical figure and the Christ, right? Christ is not his last name. Christ is a word that means the everything, right? The consciousness from which emanates reality. So that's a nuance. Now my faith is summed up in this statement that if God is love, then your spirituality is determined much more by the quality of your love than it is by the content of your belief. Focus on the love. Let love be your spiritual practice. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, David, you're a Christian minister. What about Jesus saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life? You just can't have willy-nilly love all over the place and everyone's happy. And I challenge that because if Jesus is God, fully made human, and God is love, then Jesus is love. Take out the name Jesus and put in the word love.
Yes.
It's no less valid. It's very orthodox. Love is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to God except through love. There we go.
I loved it when I heard you say, I challenge is not the right word, but I suggest that you're curious and open up that dusty Bible that might be find it somewhere. And every time you see the word Jesus, put in love instead. I
Yeah.
love. I'm going to do that. I haven't done it yet.
See how it feels, right? Oh my
It
gosh, if
feels
only the
really good, right?
church, right? If only the church is in need of a new reformation.
Right.
And love must always be at the core of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. So when you were young and a student in this NDE, you experienced this NDE, did you share it with anyone?
No way. No
Right.
way. And it's for the same reason that everyone doesn't. Most people don't share. You worry people will say you're crazy, or you worry that you were, or that it was a dream or a hallucination, or it will be diminished or dismissed. And I don't know what to do with it, right? Right after my NDE, it's a church service, right? Uh, I I recovered in this world. They wrapped me in a blanket. They took my vitals. They said I had a slight concussion because I'm a really tall guy, and when I hit the floor, it hurts. And they sent me home, and I crawled into my bed and I grieved. And I didn't tell anyone for years. And there's no rational uh, explanation for that. You'd think I'd get into the pulpit and proclaim it, but you don't know what to do with it. You have gone through existential dissonance. You've moved from this level of consciousness to one so expansive, and then you're compressed back into this with the wetware of your brain and the software of your language just completely inadequate to the experience. So you have to slowly let it seep and simmer, right, and then rise with experience uh, in the years that follow.
So when did you finally feel that you wanted to wanted to start sharing, or did it just happen one day? You know, it was the right time and place.
Yeah, I started hearing about others that had near death experiences, and I began having dreams, right, memories of it that were visceral and making me feel so full and so loved and luminous and yet so sad. And I just wanted to cry as well as to dance with joy. And I allowed it to return, and I knew exactly what it was. right? This is a living memory, and I it's not that I forgot that it happened or when it happened. I suppressed it all in order to function with the world I was embedded in. Um, so when I did start sharing, I did it quietly and gently, recognizing, yes, I remember that. It's not I had one of those. It was um, oh right. It's like a breath. It's like a contemplation. It's a knowing. And I don't remember who I shared it with first, but I know I began sharing when I heard accounts from others. And a few years had passed by then, and I didn't stop sharing. There was one account, and I wrote about it in my book, where I was sitting with an elderly couple in my first parish. Olaf was his name, and they were in their 90s. They had survived the war in Poland, and he had a near-death experience when he was in his late 20s, and his wife had found him. He collapsed in the bathtub, hit his head, and he related the joy and the vision and the love, and then he began weeping with me, this young new minister, and he was lamenting, why do we hurt each other? Why do we have war? Why don't we listen to the love of God? It's so real, right? And he told me about his, and that brought mine to life in a whole new way.
Yeah. And it's that, I'm sure the dreams, and I'm sure when you meditate or however you do your contemplative practice, it comes back up. But you know how you wake up from those dreams that are either visitations, and they're more, and the emotion you feel when you wake up. I mean, I can just feel it having this conversation from you.
Yeah,
Wow. So were
yeah.
you still, when you experienced this, were you still David? Were you still you?
Oh, yes, but not like this.
Okay, so tell us about that.
Um, Again, to now suddenly be you and yet one with everything, an individual, but an individual expression of the universal consciousness, a drop in the ocean, aware of the ocean, um, filled with joy, connection, rapture. Um, and I was still this, right? A biped, a human, walking, feet upon the ground, and yet in a body that was healthier than this has ever been, and a mind that is clearer and more intelligent and connected in sync, and an ego that is, well, if I didn't have an ego, I still had identity in some form, and don't ask me to explain how. Or
Yes.
perhaps I had ego identity, but it was now suddenly healthy, right? I felt like a child at Christmas,
Yeah.
right? Uh, and yet not really self-conscious of anything except the love, right?
Yeah. Oh, so you talk about we will be with you and what they told you, and you say that they nudge you. I love that word nudge. They nudge you during your life. And so, who do you think? I don't know. It sounds like a silly question, but I'm just going to ask it. Who do you think the we is?
Yeah, who are they?
Who are
Well, whoever they are, they're very good at what they do.
they? As they should be.
Yeah. So when he said they, right, it's plural. So you know, there is a spectrum of consciousness. There are so many levels and expressions of the one consciousness. So you can call them angels and archangels or companions or guides or whatever. Um, don't put them in a box. Just trust
Right.
that there's a multitude of them. I got the sense. and this was not told, I just have a sense that I've got three of them. Him, and he is a masculine figure, entity, and two others, which you might call guardian angels. And I'm pretty sure they've been watching my foolishness every day since we were there. And they have a good sense of humor, and they're very patient and compassionate with me. And I am a silly and wandering expression of their love. And I'm not alone, so
I
it's okay.
interviewed Raymond Moody, and he loves to talk about the humor in the, in the heavenly realm, I will say, in the afterlife. So much humor. I'm very excited about that. And the
Yeah,
knowledge, the
yeah,
humor and the knowledge. Yeah.
yeah. I'm banking on that.
Yes, yes, I am too. So you
Right.
say that you realized that love, it's not an emotion, but it is, well, you tell us what it is.
Yeah, if God is love, then love is not an emotion, it is the highest state of consciousness,
Yes.
which means we continue to evolve into love after we leave this world. That's pretty obvious. That's pretty basic. You don't sit on a cloud playing a harp with no intermission. You have adventures. You have growth and learning and things to create and explore, and it's a huge universe. And it's the beginning of a completely new stage of development,
Right.
which also means this stage we're in is no less sacred than that, though feels so separate from it. This that's why I have a cute little phrase in the book. I say people who are aware of the gift of ordinary things and that everything is really sacred. It's oh, I forgot. Elizabeth Browning said this, and I'm paraphrasing. Um, all ground is sacred ground. Some of us take off our shoes, and the rest of us just eat the blueberries.
I have that written down right here that I
Yeah,
was going to ask you about that. Uh,
yeah. So everything is sacred. Even a person who is yelling at me or honking their horn or really bugging me, they are sacred. And
yeah.
if I can observe my own experience in responding or reacting to that, my triggers, if I can observe my ego, then I can better honor the sacred within them, even if they don't honor it within themselves.
Mhm.
And I can do the same for me by being compassionate and kind to the inner child,
Yes.
by being tender and patient with the foolish, um, the fool who wants to fight back. And when in doubt, just keep your mouth shut, your heart open, and focus on the love.
What were you, what was your experience as a child? What kind of, were you sensitive, or you were raised in a religious
Yeah.
home? Tell us a little bit about
Um,
that.
we were nominal Anglicans or Episcopalian in the American tradition. We family of five kids, Navy family. I was an introvert, quiet, withdrawn, shy. Read a lot of books. Right. It
Was
was
it
a
hard?
pleasant childhood. Yeah.
It was a pleasant childhood. Nice. So to segue a little bit, the work you're doing now is just beautiful, and you're working in palliative care at the Cancer Center in Nova Scotia. And I was really touched by the story about Josh in your book. And so, can you just tell us a little bit about Josh and what he taught you?
Oh, I'm still unpacking the gift of Josh. That was so many
No.
years ago. He was the youngest person we'd ever treated. It gave him a bone marrow transplant, 14 years old.
Mhm.
And it was his buoyant spirit, his friendly nature despite his suffering. Um, and he welcomed me into his world. And, I was a giant. I'm 6'8", so I'm the high priest. And
Yes.
I would come in and sit down with Josh, and he'd be playing some video games, and I'd play with him, and his mom would be there, and right, we just talk plainly about the experience of fighting for your life. And when he had the transplant, he had something called graft versus host disease. His body rejected the donor stem cells and started going into total system failure. One of the things that calmed him is therapeutic touch, and I teach that and use it with patients. So I'm moving my hands over the body in through the biofield, the energy field, and trying to modulate a resonance that is going to facilitate balance and accelerate well-being. And that calmed him and connected him. He really liked it. So I came to work one day, and it was a Monday, and I wondered how Josh did through the weekend because Friday was rough. And I learned he was in the intensive care unit on life support. Everything was falling apart. So you go down and you take a breath and you pull the curtain back and you step through. And he's so small in the bed. And there's all these instruments around him, and his parents are weeping. And they said to me, they said, there's nothing more we can do. His liver has failed, his kidney's shutting down. If we keep him on life support, we're only going to be torturing him. And we know. The only thing that gave him comfort was therapeutic touch. Could you give him another treatment? So I had no idea how I could do that, but I did. And I sensed from him fear when I initiated the treatment. And as I did it, I just had a meditation. We are with you. Love is with you. Love will receive you. You're not alone. Right? And did the treatment. Right? My tears are falling on his body, and my heart is breaking, and yet it's so beautiful, right? We're shattered and beautiful. And then nearing the end of the treatment, I sensed, I don't know how else to describe it, I sensed this peace, and he knew that we were there. So this is what I told the parents. At the beginning was fear, and now there is peace. And so then I stepped out, pulled the curtain, and they went to his side, and only took a few minutes, and he had died in their arms. So in his dying, Josh taught me how not to abandon any part of my own sadness as I care for someone. Right? That sadness honors them.
Yes.
It doesn't compromise my therapeutic relationship. I'm a chaplain after all. I'm right providing spiritual care. If I will not show that sadness, I'm suppressing a massive part of my humanity. You can't be inauthentic in those situations. So be transparent. And I could, knowing that he was going home. Right? I quietly, I secretly say to everyone I'm with who dies, and there have been hundreds, I quietly say, tell them hi from me. I miss them. Right? And in every prayer over the dying and the dead, I end it by just saying, we'll see you on the other side. There are no final goodbyes.
Thanks for sharing that. Do you think in a situation like that, and I'm very interested in this work, that if Josh heard stories about NDE stories. Do you think that would have been helpful to him, or did they?
It certainly would have been helpful for his parents. It would have been helpful for him. I often wonder about that when I'm with someone with an advanced disease or in a palliative situation, but I don't offer it
Right,
unless
right.
appropriate, right? If spirit guides, if the moment creates an opportunity where it's appropriate, then
Mm,
share. And it can be as simple as asking a leading question. What do you think it's going to be like? Do you think
exactly.
there's anything out there? When I've done that, more often than not, someone will share, yeah, I think something's out there. And they will say, I heard an account. My grandmother or my aunt or my friend or, right, they'll share. And because over 80%, this is according to a study done by Dr. Christopher Kerr at Buffalo Hospice, over 80% of palliative patients as they approach death will have nearing death awareness when they're not totally unconscious. So this is nearing death vitality. They open the eyes, they see their welcoming parties, spirits of loved ones or angels. There's an infilling of peace, sense of connection to everything, transcendent equanimity in the face of death. Over 80%. Um, the stats on near death experiences are very high. 1 in 10 who have a cardiac episode will have this out of body experience, near death experience, or maybe that's 1 in
I think it's
5.
1 in 5.
Yeah, one
Yes.
in five with cardiac. 1 in 10 people who have a brush with death, according to Dr. Bruce Grayson's work
Mhm.
and his fantastic new book, After.
Well,
Like, buy my book, listeners, but buy his first. I mean, I love his book.
I love his book.
Yeah. So it's really common. But why aren't we talking about it in medicine? Well, because that's a material reductionist perspective in which we're trying to fix people. And this is still in the woohoo mystical phenomenon category. Okay, so why don't we talk about it in the church? Well, because we're theologically trained and not aware of the phenomenology of near death experiences. And if the average individual has mystical experiences, then what do we do with that? You know, that in the past has threatened the structure of the church. The universality of near death experiences compromises the exclusive claims some denominations put upon Jesus, right? We need a more robust theology and understanding of this phenomenon because, hey, death is a 100% statistic. We're all going to find out one day.
Right, right. And the beauty, really the beauty of it all, you know,
Hmm.
not the
Yeah.
dying part many times, but the transitioning.
Yeah. When pain is well controlled, death is, for all of the grief and sadness, death can be the most transcendent, life changing experience for the grieving, right? Let alone for the one who's dying, right? Got to keep pain well controlled. Got to use good palliative care.
Yes.
Uh, and it gets all complicated because we don't want to leave this world. We resist dying, right?
Families resist. Yes.
Yeah. Talk with kids about it. Show them death when there's an opportunity. Is there an insect that's died? Is there a bird? Is there a pet? Right? And ask them, what do you think happens? What is life? Get philosophical, get
Right.
curious. Kids see it on TV all the time, in cartoons, right? There's an opportunity to talk about it. But be lighthearted about it and don't push it, right? Let the kids take the lead.
Right.
Um, they're going to be wiser than we suspect.
Yes.
75% of children who have a brush with death will have a near death experience. So it's much more common with them. I think it's because they're more pure or they don't have all that emotional cholesterol built up inside over the decades.
Yes.
Uh, and if you can talk with them about this before they reach the age of 5 or 6, because by that time, the memory and the language and that intuitive connection to spirit, or if consciousness exists before birth, then to that really disappears around age 5, 6, 7. Right. So start early, relax, talk about it with your family, but go do your homework first.
Yeah, definitely. So I just changed my question when I interviewed Rebecca Valla a few days ago. I always say, what would you like to shout to the world? Well, not to everyone, and she said, I like to not shout, but sing. So what would you like to sing to the world?
Oh, that's going to be scary. Oh, you don't want to
You
hear
don't have to sing.
that. What I would like to share with the world is to let love be your spiritual practice. So, like, then it doesn't matter if you believe in God or not,
Right.
because it maybe in the end it doesn't. What matters is how you love, and that includes yourself. How do I
Yeah.
love myself? In the food that I'm eating, in the way that I'm sleeping, in how I speak to you, in how I speak to myself. How do I love? How do I become love? Practice, practice, practice. Have a sense of humor with yourself in that project, and trust that there's nothing wiser to do.
Right. How do you walk in this life now after having such a glorious experience and kind of coming back to, as you say, the muck?
How do I walk in this life as human as ever?
Yeah.
Right? I am continually astonished by the foolishness of my mind. Of I'm continually amused or infuriated by how ridiculous I am. Um,
So
I
true.
I'm still practicing, right? How do I love? I'm forever practicing it,
Yeah.
and it's a comedy and a tragedy, and it's all going to be okay.
Right.
Um, and warning though, when you do this work intentionally, teachers will be brought to you and they will bug
Yes.
you, right?
Yes.
The
Absolutely.
job of the spiritual teacher is to insult you, is to challenge your ego, right? Those defense mechanisms that kick up for self-preservation and justification, and to say, I am strong, of value, I am wise, I am powerful, I am here, I am important, right? Ego stuff. Be gentle with your mortality. Um, I don't feel like I'm getting better at love, at life, at living, and I do recognize I'm quite incapable of seeing myself accurately from inside my own experience. That's why I need family to whack
Right.
me up the
Right.
side of the head,
Yes.
right? To undermine my subconscious statements of, right, I'm always watching for grandiosity, right, or for ways I can prop myself up. All just, but at that same time, don't believe all the negative thoughts. You're not horrible. You're not ugly. You're not inadequate. You're magnificent, beautiful, immortal, and a one of a kind expression of the universe. But don't let that go to your head.
Mhm.
Let it go into your heart and know that everyone else is that too. Celebrate.
Beautifully said.
I was driving back from visiting family one day, and my mother, I was visiting them because my mom died. It's a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
and a death that she was waiting for and that set her free from prolonged dementia. And I admired so much how my family loved her, cared for her at home, and then found the best place for her when we could not care for her well. And just, they loved beautifully. So I'm driving home with my son. And I put the music on shuffle. And what came on was this funny song, I think from the 90s, called Wear Sunscreen. And it's just advice of a guy at a valedictorian class. Wear sunscreen. How do I live? I need to follow advice like that, right? Not just wear sunscreen, but respect your elders and realize advice is antiques from the past brushed off and sold again, looking new. Yeah. Anyway.
So, if you could take a walk with your 5-year-old self, what would you say?
Oh boy. I'd say invest in Apple early. Buy low, sell high. Sorry, that's.
What would you say after
Okay.
that?
Okay. I would say don't be afraid. Life is going to throw some scary things your way, and people are going to be challenging or scary as well. Trust. You are so much more than you could ever imagine. Follow your heart. Be kind. And forgive. Forgive yourself and others. Don't buy in to pain and resentment, right? Those are not good investments. Um, you will discover, for all of its darkness, the world is filled with light, right? But it comes from within. And my 5-year-old kid wouldn't have a clue what I'm talking about. But,
I think maybe they would.
yeah.
They're the wise ones. Well, thank you. So, go ahead.
Thank you, especially for that last question, because the 5-year-old me still lives inside. I still need to talk to him.
I went to a retreat once and they had us take a picture of ourselves when we were like, find a picture of ourselves when we were like 4 or 5 years old and put it on our screen, like on our iPhone or on our phone, and just check in with that little person regularly. Yeah, it's interesting.
I'll do that.
Yeah, I know you will. Well, thank you. So, is there anything else you'd like to share that I didn't ask you?
No, this has been really beautiful. This is lovely.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. It's all very heartfelt. If people want to learn more, they can go to davidmcginley.com. Maginley. It's a weird spelling. And you can see all the requisite social media stuff and information. I should write more and blog more, but
And your beautiful book.
yes, and have a look at the book, especially if you're facing cancer. The tidal wave of patients just was so much, and I'm glad the book is helping so many more than I could individually. It's surprised it's received awards and acclamations, and I was always a mediocre student, so that's a total shock to me.
Well, this is a whole different ball game, right? But I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.
Keep shining.
Okay. You too. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening in today. If you want to learn more about the show, you can find us at interviewswithinnocence.com and on Facebook or Instagram at Interviews with Innocence. Please write me a message, tell me what you liked, and let me know what else you would like to hear. I would love to hear from you. And if you liked what you heard, please leave us an iTunes rating and review. It helps other listeners find the show. Thank you.